The number was wrong. It sat there in the middle of a spreadsheet the size of a small city, one cell among 47,000, formatted in the same clean font as every other figure on the page. No one had flagged it, no one had questioned it. It had passed through the hands of a senior analyst, a vice president, and two partners before it landed, unchallenged, in the final version of a client presentation that was scheduled to go out at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning. Marcus Webb found it at 11:30 on a Thursday night. He had not been asked to find it. He had not been assigned to the Callaway deal at all. He was 22 years old and 11 weeks into a 12-week internship at Hargrove Financial Group, a mid-sized investment advisory firm with offices on the 31st floor of a glass tower downtown. His badge said Intern in letters large enough to read from across a conference room. He had been given a standing desk at the far end of the open floor, wedged between the supply closet and the fire door, in the spot where the air conditioning ran loudest and coldest. He had found the number by accident, the way most important things are found. What Marcus did not know, working alone in the empty office that Thursday night while the city hummed 31 floors below him, was that the spreadsheet he had opened out of curiosity contained the most important error in Hargrove Financial Group's 11-year history. He didn't know that the wrong number would have pushed a client named Gerald Callaway, the founder of a regional hospital network, to restructure his entire endowment fund on a false premise. He did not know that $9 million in projected revenue, money the firm was counting on to secure a second office in Atlanta and hire 14 new analysts, rested on a column that didn't add up. All Marcus knew was that the number looked wrong. He sat with it for a while the way he always sat with things that didn't settle. He had grown up doing that, sitting quietly with a problem, turning it over. His mother, Denise, had called it his long thinking face. She was the one who had put him on the bus to this city 5 years ago with a rolling suitcase and a Ziploc bag full of the snacks she knew he liked. The one who had worked the information desk at a county health department for 19 years so that her son could have the kind of life where someone handed him a spreadsheet and trusted him to understand it. She did not know he had stayed late. She thought he was already home. He pulled up a calculator on his second screen and checked the formula manually. Then he checked the source data. Then he checked the quarterly figures that were supposed to feed into the model. The number in the cell was supposed to represent a compounded return on a 3-year bond tranche, projected forward at a rate the firm had agreed to with the client. The formula was pulling from the right source. The rate was the rate. The math was clean. The problem was the date. Someone, somewhere in the chain of the model's construction, had entered the maturity date of the bond tranche as March 14th, 2031. The correct date was March 14th, 2021. The model was projecting 10 additional years of compounded growth on a position that had already matured and been settled. The result was a figure that looked healthy and exact, the kind of figure that made clients feel secure, the kind that no one argues with in a conference room when the slides are already printed and the client is flying in from Charlotte. The kind that, if no one noticed, would send Gerald Callaway home with a picture of his fund that was $9 million too optimistic. Marcus sat back in his chair and let the air conditioning run over him for a moment. He opened a new document and typed what he had found, cleanly and without decoration. Cell reference, source data path, the wrong date, the correct date, the difference in the projected figure. He kept it to one page. Then he sat with the document and thought about what to do next. He was the intern. He had not been assigned to this file. He had found it because he had stayed late to finish his own work. A sector comparison analysis that Priya Matha, the mid-level associate who supervised the interns, had given him on Wednesday afternoon with a Friday deadline. He had been thorough. He had pulled more data than he needed. One of the extra files he had opened to cross-check an index figure had been the Callaway model, left unlocked in the shared drive by whoever had been working on it last. He had no standing, strictly speaking, to say anything at all. If you have ever been the person in the room without a title, without a track record, without anyone in the building who would vouch for you on site, you know the particular weight of a moment like this. You feel it in the chest. Marcus felt it there that Thursday night, in the cold air of the empty floor, with the city lights scattered outside the windows like the reflection of something enormous that had not yet been named. He thought about his mother, who had never in 19 years looked the other way when something at that information desk wasn't right, even when it was easier and quieter and safer to let it pass. She had a saying that Marcus had carried since he was a boy. If you see it and you let it go, you saw it. He sent the email at 11:52 p.m. He addressed it to Priya Mather because she was the only person in the firm he had a working relationship with. He attached his one-page summary. His subject line read, "Possible date error in Callaway model, please review." He used the word possible because he was not arrogant, and he used the word please because he was not reckless. Then he went home. Priya read the email at 6:14 the following morning, sitting in her car in the parking garage of her apartment complex, phone in one hand and coffee in the other. The way she read everything before she went upstairs to wake her daughter. She stared at it for a long time. She knew the Callaway deal. Everyone in the office knew the Callaway deal. It had been the firm's most prominent engagement of the year, a complex restructuring of a hospital network's investment endowment that had required 8 months of analysis, 3 rounds of partner review, and more late nights than she cared to count. The presentation was going out in less than 3 hours. Callaway was landing at the airport at 8 o'clock. The partners had signed off on everything 2 days ago. She checked the model from her phone. She found the cell Marcus had cited. She checked the date. She sat in her car for 4 minutes without moving. Then she called David Hargrove. David Hargrove was 61 years old and had founded the firm with his college roommate in a shared office in this city's financial district on a day when neither of them had enough to cover the security deposit on the lease. He had spent 11 years building something careful and precise and earned, a firm built on the reputation that when Hargrove Financial told you a number, the number was right. He answered on the second ring. He always answered early calls. Priya told him what she had found, what an intern had found. She read him the cell reference, the wrong date, the correct date, the $9 million gap. She heard David go very quiet on the other end of the line, the particular quiet of a person recalculating something they believed was already settled. When he spoke, his voice was measured and exact, the voice of a man who had learned long ago that panic does not fix a number. "How sure is he?" David said. "I checked it myself," Priya said. "He's right." Another pause. Priya heard the sound of a drawer opening, the soft crack of a laptop, keystrokes. "Get him in early," David said. "I want to talk to him before we call Callaway." Marcus had been in the office for 40 minutes when David came to find him. He was at his standing desk by the supply closet, working on the sector analysis, when he looked up and saw the founder of the firm walking across the open floor toward him, alone. No assistant, no intermediary. David was a big man, broad across the shoulders, with close-cropped grey hair and eyes that missed very little. He stopped at the edge of Marcus's desk and looked at him for a moment. "Walk me through it," he said. Marcus walked him through it. He had the one-page document open on his screen and he talked through each line the way he talked through everything, quietly and precisely, without performance. He did not editorialize. He did not inflate. He showed David the wrong date, the source data, the formula, the corrected figure. He had also that morning, before anyone else arrived, calculated what the correct projection should be, with a note at the bottom explaining his methodology in case he had made a mistake of his own. David read the note at the bottom. He was quiet for a long moment. "You calculated the corrected figure," David said. It was not quite a question. "I wanted to give you something useful," Marcus said. "Not just the problem." David looked at this 22-year-old who had found what no one else had found, who had sent an email at 11:52 at night with the word "please" in the subject line, and who had shown up the next morning and done the next right thing without being asked. He recognized something in the posture, in the care, in the absence of any bid for credit. He pulled a chair from the nearest empty workstation, set it beside Marcus's standing desk, and sat down. "Tell me about yourself," he said. They talked for 22 minutes. Callaway's presentation was postponed by 4 hours. The Callaway model was corrected. The $9 million error was caught before it reached the client, before it shaped a single investment decision, before it settled into the official record of a deal that was supposed to represent the best work Hargrove Financial Group could do. Callaway was told there had been a date entry error caught in a final review. He was told the corrected figures. He was told the firm was grateful for his patience. He said he was grateful for the firm's diligence. He said he had chosen Hargrove because of their reputation for exactness, and it was good to see that reputation earned. He signed the restructuring agreement that afternoon. What Callaway was not told that day, not yet, was who had found the error. He would find that out later in a way that had its own shape and its own weight, and when he did, it would matter. In the hours after the deal closed, something else was already in motion. David called Priya into his office at 4:15 that afternoon. He asked her about Marcus, about his work, about how he carried himself, how he handled direction, whether he was the kind of person who sought credit or the kind of person who solved problems. Priya had supervised 3 intern classes. She told David what she had seen in 11 weeks. Marcus was the quietest person on the intern cohort and the most thorough. He turned in work without errors and without excuses. When he didn't know something, he said so, and he learned quickly and without needing to be told twice. David listened to all of it. He told Priya he wanted to offer Marcus a full-time analyst position at the end of the internship. The standard first-year salary for analysts at Hargrove was $63,000. David said he wanted to offer Marcus $71,000, backdated to the start of the internship, with a signing bonus of $5,000. Priya wrote the number down carefully. "He saved us $9 million, David said. And he wasn't even assigned to that file. He wasn't staying late to impress anyone. He found a problem and he told someone." He paused. "I've worked with people for 30 years who couldn't do that." Marcus did not know any of this yet. He was at his standing desk finishing the sector comparison analysis he had been given on Wednesday. It was due the following morning. He planned to turn it in that afternoon. It was thorough and clean and exact, the same way his work always was. Without flourish, without a bid for notice, because that was simply how he worked. He had not told anyone else in the intern cohort about the Callaway error. He had not mentioned it at lunch. He had not posted about it or said it casually in the way that people who have done something important sometimes can't resist saying it. He had found something, told someone, and gone back to work. The phone on his desk rang at 4:40. It was David's assistant asking if he could come up to the partner offices. Marcus had been to the partner offices once for an orientation tour on his first day. He rode the elevator up 2 floors and was shown into David's office, which looked out over the city with the kind of view that is also a statement. Priya was already there, seated to one side. She gave Marcus a small nod when he came in. David asked him to sit down. He told Marcus that the firm was grateful. He said it plainly and without decoration, the way a person says something they mean. He told Marcus that the error would have been catastrophic, that the client relationship would have been damaged, that the firm's reputation for precision was the foundation everything else was built on. He said that Marcus had protected something that 11 years of work had built. Marcus sat quietly through all of it. He did not deflect, and he did not perform modesty. He listened the way his mother had taught him that receiving something graciously was its own form of dignity. Then David told him about the offer. Marcus heard the number, and then he heard the signing bonus, and then he sat for a moment with both of them, the way he sat with a cell reference that didn't settle. His face did not change in any dramatic way. His eyes got a little full. He pressed his lips together and looked at the window and then back at David. "I need to call my mom," he said quietly. David smiled at that. It was the first time Marcus had seen the man's face soften completely. "Of course you do," David said. Marcus called Denise from a quiet corner of the hallway, standing by a window with the city stretched out 33 floors below him. She answered on the second ring, the way she always did for Marcus, because he was her son, and she had answered on the second ring for him since the day he got his first phone at 14. He told her, not all of it at once, but enough. He heard her breathe. He heard the particular sound of his mother not crying in front of him, which was a sound he knew well, the slight catch and control of it, the deliberate steadiness. "Baby," she said, "you did the right thing." "I know, Mama," he said. "No, listen to me," she said. "You did the right thing, and nobody told you to do it. That's the thing I want you to hear. Nobody told you to." He stood by the window for a long time after he hung up, looking at the city, thinking about 11 weeks, thinking about a standing desk by a supply closet, thinking about a cold email sent at 11:52 at night with the word "please" in the subject line. There is a kind of person who does the careful work regardless of whether anyone is watching. Marcus had been one of them before the internship, and he was one of them now, and that was why what happened next was not luck, but payment, the slow, exact return of something that had been accumulating since before anyone at Hargrove Financial Group knew his name. He accepted the offer the following Monday. On his first official day as a full analyst, he moved from the standing desk by the supply closet to a desk in the main analyst pool, the one with a window view of the city on the north side. Priya stopped by his desk in the morning, set down a new access badge with his name on it, and told him there was a project meeting at 2 o'clock she wanted him in. The badge said analyst in clean letters. his name above it. He set it on his desk and looked at it for a moment before he put it on. What he did not know yet, on that first Monday, was that Calloway had asked David 2 weeks after the deal closed, who had caught the error. David had told him. Calloway had gone quiet for a moment on the phone, and then asked a question that David had not expected. What kind of person sends a careful email at midnight with the word "please" in the subject line about a file he was never supposed to be in? David had answered simply, "The kind of person you want in the building." Calloway had said yes. He had asked if he might meet Marcus at some point. David had said he thought that could be arranged. Marcus found out about it the way he found out about most things, without warning and without ceremony. He was at his desk on a Wednesday afternoon in February, 8 weeks into the new role, when Priya stopped by and told him that Calloway was coming in for a follow-up meeting the next morning and had specifically asked that Marcus be included in the briefing team. Marcus looked up from his screen. "He asked for me?" "By name," Priya said. She was smiling in a careful way. "Be there at 9. He was there at 9. Calloway was 64 years old, a broad, unhurried man who had built a hospital network from one clinic in a mid-sized southern city into a 7-location system that treated over 40,000 patients a year. He came into the conference room without the energy of a man who needed to impress anyone, shook hands around the table, and sat down. When he got to Marcus, he held the handshake a moment longer than the others. "I know who you are," Gerald said. "David told me." He looked at Marcus with a kind of frank attention. "You weren't supposed to be in that file." "No, sir," Marcus said. "But you were careful. You stayed late. And when you saw something wrong, you told someone." Gerald nodded slowly. "In my hospital network, we call that a safety culture. When you see something, you say something. It's the difference between a bad outcome and a prevented one." He paused. "You've got that instinct." Marcus did not know what to say to that. He said quietly, "Thank you, sir." After the meeting, when the room had mostly cleared, Calloway stopped beside Marcus on his way to the door. "I have a foundation," Gerald said. "We fund scholarships for first-generation college students going into finance and economics. We're looking for someone to manage the investment committee. Part-time, advisory role, real work." He looked at Marcus the way a person looks at something they've already decided. "I'd like you to consider it." Marcus stood very still for a moment. "I'd be honoured," he said. He called his mother from the parking garage that evening, sitting in his car with the engine off and the city noise leaking in through the windows. He told her about the foundation, about the advisory role, about Calloway's handshake and the thing he'd said about safety culture. He told her all of it, slowly, without hurrying any part. Denise listened to every word. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You know what I kept thinking about?" she said. "All those years when you were little, and you'd sit with something for a long time before you said anything." "The long thinking face," Marcus said. "I used to worry about that," she said. "I used to think, this boy is too quiet, he's going to let people walk over him, he's going to let things go." She paused. "I was wrong." He drove home that evening through the lit-up city, past the bus stops and the diners and the corner offices with their windows still glowing, past the places where careful, invisible people did their work without anyone watching. He thought about his mother at the information desk. He thought about a spreadsheet with 47,000 cells. He thought about a single wrong date sitting quietly in one of them, waiting to be found by the person who was thorough enough to look. Some people say that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Marcus had heard that said. He didn't argue with it exactly. He thought about it differently, though. He thought that the opportunity was always there, quiet in the data, in the work, in the space between what someone was asked to do and what they actually noticed. And the only thing that made the difference was whether you were the kind of person who, when you saw something, said something, not for reward, not for recognition, not because a partner might be watching from a glass office down the hall, but because you were the kind of person who did. He had always been that kind of person. He had learned it from a woman who answered an information desk for 19 years and never once looked the other way. His mother did not know the $9 million. She had not asked. What she knew was that her son had seen something and done the right thing, and that was the number that mattered to her, the one she had always been adding up, quietly over years, in a column nobody else could read. He stopped at her apartment on his way home. She had made food, the way she always did when he came over without calling ahead, as if she always had a plate ready, which she usually did. They sat at her small kitchen table and ate together, and at some point she reached across and put her hand over his for a moment, the way she had done his whole life when something was too large for either of them to say out loud. The light in the kitchen was warm and particular, the overhead bulb that had the same wattage it had always had, the same corner where she kept the 2 plants she'd had since before he was born, the same table where he had done homework and college applications and, on one long spring night 2 years ago, the practice exercises for a certification exam he had not been sure he could pass. He had passed. He stayed until after 9, and when he stood to go, she walked him to the door and straightened his collar the way she had done when he was 6 and starting school, and the habit had simply never stopped. "You did good, baby," she said at the door. "You taught me," he said. She stood in the doorway and watched him go down the stairs, and when he reached the bottom and looked back up, she was still there, the kitchen light warm behind her, one hand on the doorframe. That was the image he carried home, not the glass tower, not the partner offices, not the handshake with Callaway or the number on the offer letter, not the access badge that said analyst or the window desk with the north view. Those were all real, and they were all earned, and they all mattered. The image, though, was his mother in the doorway, in the warm light, watching him go. He was still that boy at the kitchen table, doing the careful work. He had just found out what the careful work was worth, and it was more than he had dared to hope, and it was exactly what she had always told him it would be. Have you ever seen someone quiet and overlooked do the thing that no one expected them to do? The thing that, looking back, made everything make sense? Leave a thought in the comments. This story was written to honour the people in every building, in every firm, in every office with a supply closet nearby, who do the right thing when no one is watching. There are more stories like this one right here on this channel, whenever you're ready. There was a part of the story that took a little longer to complete, the part that comes after the offer letter and the new desk, and the first time someone introduces you in a conference room as an analyst instead of an intern. The part that is less about a single night and more about what a person does with the space that opens up afterward. Marcus moved through the first months of the role with the same care he had brought to the internship, and gradually the floor got to know him the way floors always come to know the careful ones, not with fanfare, not with a story passed around from desk to desk, because Marcus was not the kind of person who circulated his own history. He was known through his work. The sector comparison analysts started routing questions his way. Priya gave him more complex assignments. By April, he was sitting in client-facing prep meetings as a note-taker, and by late June, he was asked to speak briefly in one. He spoke briefly and correctly and without a word more than the question required. The foundation work started in March. Callaway had described it as an investment committee role. Part-time, real work, nothing ceremonial about it. The foundation held $7 million in a mix of fixed income and equity, and the committee met monthly to review allocations and approve new scholarship disbursements. There were 4 other people on the committee, experienced professionals in their 50s and 60s, and Marcus was the youngest by 26 years. He did not mistake their patience for indulgence. He read every document twice before each meeting. He asked the questions he actually had and not the questions that would sound impressive. He disagreed once, in May, on a proposed reallocation into a municipal bond fund with an unusual fee structure, and he laid his reasoning out in writing before the meeting so the committee could review it cold. The reallocation was tabled for a month. When it came back with a revised structure, the fee issue had been addressed. No one said anything directly to Marcus about it. Callaway said something indirectly after the June meeting when the two of them were standing at the elevator. "I like how you work," Gerald said. "You don't throw things at the wall." "My mother didn't allow it," Marcus said. Gerald laughed. It was a full, unguarded laugh, the kind from a man who doesn't laugh carelessly. "What does she do?" Gerald asked. Marcus told him. "The information desk. 19 years. The county health department." Gerald was quiet for a moment. "My mother worked the front desk of a hospital for 17 years, he said. "The one I built the first clinic next to." He looked at Marcus. "She used to say that the front desk people know everything that's actually happening in a building and nobody ever asks them." "She was right," Marcus said. "She was always right," Gerald said. "It's one of the main reasons I got into healthcare." The elevator arrived. Gerald stepped in and turned. "Bring your mother to the foundation reception in August," he said. "We do a dinner for the scholarship recipients. She should see where some of this goes." Denise had not owned a dress suitable for a foundation reception in several years. She said this plainly when Marcus told her about it, with no distress and no false modesty, just the frank accounting of a woman who knew what was in her closet. Marcus drove her to a department store on a Saturday afternoon in July, and they walked through the aisles together the way they had when he was a child. And she was trying to find something for a school event on a thin budget, except now he was carrying the card, and she kept saying it was too much, and he kept saying it was not. She found a dress the colour of deep plum, simple and well cut. She said it was practical. He said it was beautiful. She bought it. The reception was held in the courtyard of one of Callaway's hospital network buildings, a quiet space with string lights and round tables and the smell of late summer air coming down from somewhere above the city. There were 40 scholarship recipients, most of them 19 or 20 years old, sitting at tables with their parents, everyone in their best clothes, everyone carrying that particular and unmistakable combination of pride and relief that belongs to families who have worked a long time for a moment like this one. Denise sat next to Marcus at the committee table. She wore the plum dress and the same small gold earrings she had worn to every important occasion Marcus could remember, the ones that had belonged to her own mother. She looked at the room of young people and their families and did not say much, but Marcus could see what it was doing to her, the fullness behind her eyes that she was managing with the same careful steadiness she had managed everything. Callaway spoke briefly at the start of the dinner. He talked about the Foundation's mission, about the idea that access to the financial industry should not be determined by the zip code a person was born in, about the kind of talent that was sitting in buildings right now going unrecognized because the people it lived in had not yet found the room they were supposed to be in. He did not name Marcus. He did not need to. Afterward, Gerald made his way to the committee table and sat down across from Denise. He introduced himself simply, offered his hand. "Your son found a $9 million error," he said to her, in a file he wasn't assigned to, at midnight, because he was thorough. Denise looked at her son for a moment. Then she looked back at Gerald. "He's been thorough since he was 4, she said. Gerald smiled. "Then you knew before any of us." She spoke quietly and without any performance. "I've known what he was since the day he was born. I was just waiting for everyone else to find out." The dinner ran until 9. On the drive home, Denise sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded in her lap and looked out at the city passing by the window. At a red light, Denise looked out the window and said softly, "Those kids tonight." "I know," Marcus said. "The girl in the green dress. Did you see her mother's face when she walked up to get the certificate?" "I saw it." "That's why he does it," Denise said. "That's the whole reason." "Yes," Marcus said. She was quiet for a while. The city moved past the windows in long ribbons of light. "I used to picture you in a room like that," she said. "I used to picture it when you were doing homework at my kitchen table. I never said it out loud because I didn't want you to feel the weight of it, but I pictured it." She turned to look at him. "I didn't picture how it would happen. I just knew it would." He pulled up in front of her building and put the car in park. She reached over and put her hand on the side of his face, the way she had done when he was small, and she was trying to make sure he understood something important. "I am so proud of you," she said. "Not for the 9 million, not for the job or the foundation or any of it." "I know, Mama," he said. "For the email," she said. "The one you sent at midnight with the word 'please' in it. For that." She held his face a moment longer. "That's who you are." He walked her to her door. She turned at the top of the stairs and looked down at him the way she had all his life. "Go home," she said. "Get some sleep." He drove home through the city, the same city that had seemed so large when he arrived with a rolling suitcase and a Ziploc bag of snacks, the city that had given him a standing desk by a supply closet and the coldest spot on the 31st floor and a file that nobody had asked him to open. He thought about a wrong date in a cell. He thought about 47,000 rows of numbers and one that didn't settle. He thought about the particular stillness of staying late when no one is watching, the hum of the air conditioning and the city lights below, the moment before you decide whether to say something or let it go. He thought about a woman at an information desk who had never once let it go. The careful work was its own kind of faith. You did it when the room was empty, and the badge around your neck said Intern, and the desk they had given you was the one nobody else had wanted. You did it because the numbers mattered, and the people behind the numbers mattered, and the truth of a thing mattered. regardless of whether anyone who could promote you was watching. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the truth turned out to be the most load-bearing thing in the building. He knew that now. He had known it for a long time. The month after the reception, Marcus was assigned his first solo client project. Not a support role, not a note-taker. His name was the primary name on the engagement sheet. Priya told him on a Tuesday morning, setting the assignment folder on his desk the same way she had set intern work on the standing desk by the supply closet. Except now the desk had a view and the folder had a different weight. He had been preparing for something like this, in the way he prepared for everything, without announcing it. He had read the firm's standard client communication templates and then set them aside and written his own versions, cleaner and more direct. He had studied the 3 engagements Priya had walked him through in the preceding months and noted where the analysis was strong and where the client documentation was harder to follow than it needed to be. He had not shared any of these observations unless someone directly asked him what he thought. The client was a mid-sized family foundation, $12 million in assets, looking to review its allocation strategy ahead of a significant shift in the organization's grant-making priorities. It was not a flashy engagement. It was the kind of careful, detailed work that required someone who was comfortable sitting with complexity for a long time before drawing a conclusion. Priya had chosen Marcus for it deliberately. He worked the engagement over 6 weeks. He met with the Foundation's board twice and sent updates to Priya after each session. He revised his preliminary analysis 3 times, not because the numbers changed, but because he found a cleaner way to explain what the numbers meant to people who were not analysts. He thought about his mother at the information desk, answering questions from people who were afraid or confused about their benefits, and the way she had always found the plain language in a complicated thing. The Foundation's board accepted his recommendations in full. Priya told David. David put a note in Marcus's personnel file. When Marcus's 6-month review came in December, the note was there alongside the performance evaluation. And the evaluation was the kind that caused David to adjust the conversation from standard review to something closer to a planning discussion about what Marcus wanted to do, where he saw himself in the firm over the next several years. Marcus was honest. He said he liked the client-facing work. He said he was interested in eventually leading his own team. He said he had been thinking about the foundation work and whether there was a way to build a practice at Hargrove that specifically served non-profit and philanthropic clients, who were often underserved by firms oriented primarily toward private wealth or institutional investors. David looked at him for a long moment. "I've thought about that too," David said. "I just didn't have the right person for it." They talked for an hour. It was the kind of conversation Marcus had never had in a professional setting before, one where his ideas were engaged as ideas rather than as the tentative offerings of someone who needed to first establish that he had standing. He drove to his mother's apartment afterward because some things you have to tell in person. Denise was in the kitchen when he arrived, and she listened to everything he said over dinner, asking the right questions at the right moments, the ones that helped him hear himself more clearly. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "So they're going to let you build something," she said. "If it develops the way David thinks it might," Marcus said. "When you were 12, she said, you reorganized my kitchen cabinets because you said the system I had didn't make sense. I found you at 10 o'clock at night relabeling the shelves." "I remember," he said. "You put everything back exactly right," she said. "And you labeled the shelves in 2 colors so that anybody who came in and didn't know the system could still figure it out." She pointed at him. "That's what you're going to do at that firm. You're going to find the thing that doesn't make sense, and you're going to organize it, and then make it legible to everyone." He smiled. She reached over and refilled his water glass the way she always did when she had said the thing she needed to say, and now they were just eating. There are stories that end with a single dramatic turn, a moment so clean and decisive that everything before it is set up and everything after it is resolution. Marcus's story had a turn like that: the late night, the wrong date, the email sent with the word "please." But what the story was actually made of was something quieter. The 6 weeks on a client engagement no one else wanted, the 2 years of careful work before that, the 19 years of watching a woman answer questions at a county information desk with patience and precision and no expectation of recognition. Kindness keeps a long memory. So does diligence. The city had not known his name on that Thursday night in October when he stayed late and opened a file he was never assigned to. The city had not been watching. The air conditioning hummed and the floor was empty, and the only light was his monitor and the 47,000 cells in a spreadsheet and one wrong date in a sea of correct ones. He had seen it. He had said something. And the rest, in the way that the rest of things accumulates when a person simply keeps doing the right work in the right way, had followed from that. Not because he had been lucky, not because someone important had happened to look down from a glass office and notice him, but because he had been thorough when thoroughness cost something, and honest when honesty required something, and careful when no one had told him to be. His mother's son. That was the whole of it. He went home that December night through the lit-up city, past the bus stops and the diners and the corner offices with their lights still burning, past the buildings where the careful invisible work was going on right now in the cold air of empty floors, at standing desks by supply closets, at information desks where people came with questions they were afraid to ask. He parked in front of his building and sat in the car for a moment before he went in. He thought about the wrong date. He thought about a formula and a source and a maturity date that someone had typed incorrectly. He thought about what it would have meant to let it go. He thought about a number, $9 million on one side, on the other side, a cell reference, a subject line, and the word please. He had always known which side he was on. He locked the car and went inside, and upstairs in his apartment the city was visible through the window, patient and lit up and enormous, full of numbers that were right and numbers that were wrong, and people careful enough to know the difference. He was one of those people. He always had been.